What kind of person do you picture if I ask you to think of an entrepreneur? What about a leader? Or maybe a job creator? Would any of them make the cut? What if I told you that we help 10 million young people achieve their goals every year, all over the world? And in turn, they create jobs and prosperity. JA has been preparing young people for successful careers since 1919. You find us all across the globe, in more than 100 countries. We're getting young people ready for work. And we get results. Our students go on to excel as professionals, taking control of their lives and careers, and some even succeed beyond their wildest dreams. JA students learn to do things like balancing a budget, negotiating deals, setting goals, and working in teams. It's hands-on learning from professionals with real-life work experience. All our programs are based in 3 fundamental principles: work readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. For example, in JA Company program, young people learn how to start and run a business. In JA Job Shadow, a student joins a mentor in a professional work setting. And students in the JA More Than Money program study the ins and outs of earning, spending, and saving. And these are only 3 of the more than 50 different programs that JA offers. Our network of staff, volunteers, and partner schools reaches young people all over the world, from major cities to rural communities and everywhere in between. And it works, because we pay attention to the needs in each region, and then we customize our programs so that JA students will be ready for the job markets they're about to enter. We even customize our own name. But at the end of the day, we're all one JA, JA Worldwide. And the core of our organization is the same everywhere. JA inspires and prepares young people to succeed in a global economy. Whoever they are, wherever they are, JA activates young people for the future of jobs.
Hello, everybody. This is Leo Martellotto, President for JA Americas, and I'm very excited to be opening our 4th webinar that we call Inspiring Voices, because it is exactly that, about spreading inspiration and motivating different stakeholders, different audiences, and getting them excited about JA's mission. Today's webinar is called The Volunteers Nation, and as the name says, is something that I'm very passionate about, because it's something that has been critical for my work and the work of Junior Achievement forever. And we will definitely talk a lot about how volunteers are leveraging impact around the world. We call it the Volunteers Nation, and let me set the stage for today's conversation before I introduce the amazing speakers that we have today with us. We call it the Volunteers Nation because, based on a study developed by the UN, if we put all together the volunteers around the world and we size them in terms of the population they would represent, they would be the 9th population around the world. So that's why this is the nation of volunteers, as we call it. In terms of benefits, and that's why I'm so excited when it comes to volunteers, there are so many, right, that volunteers bring to the society, especially when it comes to young people. When they are volunteers, they are definitely bringing a lot of impact to the cause that they are serving. They are bringing their energy, their creativeness, and their ideas. But while they are volunteers, of course, it brings benefit to them, because they are not just absorbing or learning something new. They are the one learning and putting to practice those skill sets that they are developing. Some of the skills that are very difficult, for example, to be trained in the schools, as we know, like leadership, teamwork, problem solving, and so on. there are also many, many benefits when it comes to employees becoming volunteers for a cause, because employees are now very excited and motivating, learning that they can also have an impact in the community, in the society, in the cause that they're passionate about through the workplace. Of course, that generates an extra motivation, and it definitely at the end also has a positive impact in the productivity of the people being part of organizations. And as you know, the young people these days, they want to connect dots when it comes to their personal cause and also the cause of the organization that they are serving. So when they see that that comes together, it's definitely an added value for them to choose the organization they want to work with. Today, you will hear from leaders from different organizations, also from young people, because youth is at the center. That's why there are two organizations from the non-corporate or for impact sector, Junior Achievement and Scouts International, two organizations that are based and focused on volunteers' engagement to make sure that their theory of change is being implemented. In the case of Scouts, I got this number and I can't believe it. I mean, if you add up all of the volunteers that Scouts had since 2013, it adds up to 2 billion community service hours. So that is more than 54 million volunteers globally supporting Scouts since 2013. In the case of Junior Achievement, because volunteers are definitely part of the theory of change, every year, only in the Americas, we have more than 15,000 volunteers, and globally, 288,000 volunteers that are supporting Junior Achievement. And today you will hear also from a representative from a key JA partner, Scotiabank, which is also a company that is committed to volunteerism in different fronts. And only to JA in the past 3 years, Scotiabank has provided more than 1,000 volunteers that have provided inspiration, commitment in different social impact initiatives. So now let's move with introducing our panelists for today. Hopefully you will enjoy hearing from them as much as we have enjoyed every time. First, Nelly Cetera. Nelly is a 22 years old Argentinian woman studying international affairs. She was one of the co-founders of the J Alumni Network. We call them the J Alumni Associations and Networks that are formed by students that went through the J experience, and then they create these communities to continue being engaged. So Nelly is a leader for the network here in Argentina. She's also a volunteer in different international youth networks. So we look forward hearing from you, Nelly, what motivates you to serve in different youth networks as a volunteer. And because she put all of that energy and effort, she's currently also part of the J Americas Regional Operating Center team, now working with us, not just as a volunteer, now being part of the full-time team. We also have Daniel Corsen. Daniel is a coach and facilitator dedicated to helping people unleash their skill sets and take their lives to the next level. He's the founder of Reshapers and offers services and solutions to organizations in improving leadership skills, navigating change, and achieving growth. Daniel was born in Curacao, in a paradise. He earned a degree in business administration from the University of Curacao and has a master's degree in financial management from the RSM Erasmus University. Daniel is an active volunteer with Scouting, so he will bring that perspective from Scouts, global organization, great capillarities everywhere. We all know it very well, so we will learn more about that. And he was the Inter-American Scout Committee chairperson, leading the whole organization from 2018 to 2022. Now he's back working with local organizations and others to help young people develop leadership and entrepreneurial ability. The third panelist for today is someone I have known for the last 14 years. He was one of the first one to say yes to a regional initiative with J Americas, and we have been able to work with Scotiabank in more than 16 countries across the region, thanks to Roy, who was the first one to believe in the J project. So Roy, as part of the Scotiabank International Philanthropy and Sponsorship teams, has led a variety of programs and projects spanning from community engagement and employee volunteers to corporate projects with entities such as, hear this, FC Barcelona. I don't know if you have heard about the Barcelona soccer team, and the CONCACAF. And as well, of course, other NGO partnerships with organizations such as I said, JA, and others like CARE. Over the last 14 years at Scotiabank, Roy has worked on projects focusing on youth development and community empowerment. So Roy is the one connecting many times dislocated worlds like the civil society, the private sector, young people, educational systems. So kind of being the facilitator connecting different sectors in the community. So with that, I now say hi to my great panelists of today. We have prepared some questions, but of course, at the end, you will also have the chance to come up with even harder questions to answer. We want the panelists to feel uncomfortable. That's a good thing when it comes to conversations. So if you have some questions that will put them to sweat, let's go for that, because that's what we like to see. And I know that's when we get the best of these conversations. So having said that, let's start with kicking the first question. I will start with you, Daniel. And again, thanks for being part of this conversation. Someone told me you do have a story with JA at certain point during the conversation, if you want to mention, because that's where everything started coming together. People that went through an experience then decides to serve a different organization, but it is all connected in a way. So we know Scouts is very focused on voluntarism, and it's part of its strength, and it's definitely a great muscle because it's penetration. But how these volunteers really support Scouts for when it comes to the impact that Scouts has around the world?
Yeah. So thank you, Leo. I'm very, very much excited to be on this session today on the panel. And as you said, I do have a background and experience with JA. So every time I hear about JA and Scouts coming together, it really fills my heart because these are two organizations that are very, very dear to my heart and have contributed very much to me being the person that I am today. So getting back to your question about volunteering and how important that is for Scouts, I think I could go back to our founder, Lord Baden-Powell, who actually always believed and said that, volunteerism is at the heart, is at the core of the movement. He believed that volunteering was essential to success of not just the Scout movement, but also the societies at large. He recognized that the movement was dependent, on the one hand, on the need and the involvement of dedicated and passionate volunteers who are willing to give their time and energy to help young people develop themselves into responsible citizens. But he also recognized and believed that young people themselves can learn all these important life skills by being volunteer, by engaging in community work as a way to have them develop things like you mentioned, collaboration, communication, leadership skills, but also being actively involved in pursuing goals and dreams. And I really believe that. So not just adults as volunteers, but also young people as volunteers could really make a difference. That it doesn't take us to become adults before having an impact on our community. We can start doing it as of a young age. And so I think Scout movement would not be the movement it is today were it not for volunteering.
Well, that's a great point you're bringing, because it's like making sure we see volunteers from different dimensions and different perspectives. And when it comes to young people and volunteerism, we always think about the young people as the beneficiaries, like them, getting this great opportunity, and a volunteer being an adult telling them what to do, right? And what you're saying is, no, youth is in the center and they can be empowered. And actually that takes me to the next question to Nelly, because Nelly being the young person on this call, 22 years, imagine. Nelly, you had experiences with volunteers. So in this case, the other way of seeing it, where you were the beneficiary. So what was that impact, that value that you got from interacting with that JA volunteer?
Well, thank you, Leo. Thank you for having me. And I think the volunteers at JA are key and vital for the experience in all the programs. I've done a couple of programs with JA, so the company, Job Shadow Day, innovation camps, and a lot of different programs. And in all of them, the role of volunteers, even when they perform different tasks and have different responsibilities, really contributed to the quality of the program. Because as a young person, you got to connect with these amazing professionals and these people who are already in the job market, and they really bring insights and connections that are very difficult for youth in Latin America, especially, to access. I think it's more common for adults to come across mentors and people who can introduce them to the job market, but to get that experience when you are so young, I mean, it's really eye-opening, and I think it's a very great value added to the programs of JA. For example, I remember when I was in Job Shadow Day, and I got to visit this company that worked with international affairs, but really on the political side. And it really opened my eyes that I didn't really like the politics side of international affairs. I really liked the connections and the people and the programs. And I mean, being there gave me the invaluable experience of realizing that I didn't like that and maybe I should choose a different path for myself. So it really just like avoided me wasting a lot of hours and life crises on a path that I didn't really like. And that is all thanks to JA. And I am here really fulfilled, like professionally and in a volunteer sense, thanks to that experience. So I really think it's a key value that the JA programs has.
Nelly, you're bringing a great point there, because it is about having access to the exposure and the opportunity and to the mentor, but it is also about having it at the right time and not late, as many cases, right? Where you see this young person where when he's already 25, 26, and then he realizes and he said, if I would have gotten this opportunity or this exposure when I was 18, I might have, made a different decision. So it is great that for you, that volunteer was able to help you revalidate what you wanted, kind of find different interests, and make sure that you could move ahead in a different path. So that's very exciting, Nelly. Thanks for sharing. Now, from the private sector side, because when it comes to NGOs, like, voluntarism is like an obvious thing, and it's definitely part of our mission and our impact. When it comes to private sector, that's not that easy, I would say. And here we have Roy, who has been in charge of developing a robust volunteerism program. And in many cases, I'm sure, Roy, like, convincing people that was worthy to do something that was not directly connected to the business, but to the community. So what is that strategy, Roy, that you have been putting together within Scotiabank, not just there in Toronto, but also across the many countries where Scotiabank is presented to recruit volunteers? What worked well, what didn't, and what has changed, I would say, to make Scotiabank a successful case?
Sure, Leon. Thanks for having me on to discuss this wonderful subject. But you'd be surprised, when you give an opportunity to people to volunteer, how much excitement and how much imagination it engages. Even in the private sector, as you say. I think, to me, in terms of challenges, we're looking at 3 dimensions here. I call it like the 3 A's. We have alignment, awareness, and access. In our experience at Scotiabank, we are a financial institution, so financial knowledge is kind of a core strength. So, when we're talking about aligning to the GA programs, such as the company program or some of your entrepreneurial programs, there is an inherent core knowledge that, our Scotia bankers are able to share and eager to share given the opportunity. So that brings me to the second dimension, which is awareness, right? Everybody's very busy, especially, these days in our jobs, in our lives, in everything. So awareness sometimes is a challenge, just in terms of getting to know about opportunities. What can you do? When can you do it? Where do you go? So just being able to communicate the opportunities is a big challenge that I think every organization has to tackle. And we have a platform that we use internally where Scotia bankers can post volunteer opportunities and can find volunteer opportunities by theme, by location, by time. So that communication dimension is very important. And then access, The third dimension is like making it realistic, bridging the gap between the reality of the employees and the folks in the programs, right? So connecting the dots, making it accessible, making the volunteers able to participate in the programs. When does it work? How does it work? Supporting those kind of logistical issues is very important as well.
Yeah, and I think what you're mentioning is very important about the alignment component, because it makes much more sense for people to join a volunteerism effort when it connects to the things that they believe and the things that they know about it. So that's very important. And the access as well. And I think that's on the NGOs part as well. How we make life easy for companies to engage with volunteerism opportunities. If we do it too complex, too complicated, it won't happen. And even giving alternatives that so then volunteers can choose from depending their very unique possibilities, right? And availability, to put it in a way. So I'm sure, Roy, that when it comes to employees being volunteers, of course, it has an impact, as we said, like, for example, for Nelly, she was the beneficiary, but it has a very deep impact on the volunteer experience. And before I ask you, Daniel, about how being a volunteer can inspire to do like big things, let me share this story. We had a volunteer from a large US corporation that was originally from Jamaica. And in summer, she decided to go and implement J programs in Jamaica. She went back to her town to implement J programs. She did it once, and she was so impacted by the experience and what she saw there. And she saw so many opportunities of how she could help, her country to progress, that she decided to quit to her job in this large IT company, move to Jamaica, and start JA there. So talking about how being a volunteer can open your eyes, can get you more sensitive about what is happening, and then you might make different decisions based on that experience. So for you, Daniel, how was it to be a volunteer and then being so inspired that you decided to become a leader for the community, not just for your country, but globally, I would say?
Yeah, so maybe just for a bit of a context, most scouts choose to become a scout. I didn't have that luxury. I was born into the scout movement. My parents are still today, till today, they are still very much active in scouting as scout leaders. So I didn't have a choice. My first camp experience was with just 3 months old, being taken by my parents to join them in camp. And so I don't know life without scouts, right? But I do think if I can sum it up in one word, it's opportunities. Scouts gave me the opportunity to explore my identity, to choose my identity, and that is by giving you opportunities to try out anything. Our meetings on Saturdays go from developing creative skills to doing sports activities, but to also exploring science, spirituality, and all of that, social skills. And so it's about giving me opportunities as a young person to choose what I like or not. It's quite similar to Nelly's experience of getting an experience and realizing this is not that's not it for me. I want something else. And that's the safe space that scouts create and offer young people to explore. Try it. There's no risk in failing. That's how you learn. It's what is very core and close to our scout program is this the essence of learning through play. Because playing is safe, right? You create your own sets of rules, and so by definition, you never lose, right? And that's the main opportunity. And I remember very clearly when I made a choice that I wanted to be a leader. Um, I was, after 13 years with Scouts, I was like, I think there has to be more than Scouts every Saturday. All my friends were Scouts, and I changed schools. I went to high school, and you get new friends. And those are not necessarily the friends you met in scouting anymore. And so I started thinking maybe, I'm bored. I want to try something else. And my parents, very savvy as they are, they said, that's fine. I mean, we are not going to make you stay in scouts if you don't like it, but you should go to a World Scout Jamboree before deciding. and because my sister was also a scout, or is also a scout, and she wanted to go. And so I said, let's go. And we went to the Jamboree in Thailand. This was back in 2011. And because of that experience, I am till this day very much committed to the Scout movement and to help lead the world into a better place. I'm very much committed to the purpose of Scouting. And so it's opportunities. And if I can just add to it, it's purpose. In the theory of motivation, there's the notion of discovering your purpose. And Scouting gives you the opportunity to discover your purpose at a very young age. And so I think those are the two things that impacted me most.
And Daniel, based on the story you have just shared, I'm pretty sure that you said I was lucky enough to have my parents like taking me there when you were still a baby. But we know that there are so many young people out there that don't have such a luxury like the one I had, that I had a J volunteer showing up in my classroom when I was 17. So I think that is kind of shaping the purpose that you and I might have. It is about, giving other young people access to the opportunities that we had because others provided it, right? We want to leverage and scale that up for others.
Yes. Yeah.
Great, exciting. So Roy, with you, I want to get a little bit more personal because I know you are a volunteer yourself and you have been volunteer for different causes. If you could share with us some of those experiences that was very impactful for you, and which skills or even changing your view that happened because that experience as a volunteer.
Sure. I mean, I think more than anything, the volunteer experience just broadens your horizons, open your minds to new experiences, new realities. You meet people that you probably would have never met in any other capacity, and you visit, places or environments that you probably would have never visited. And I think, as you go through these experiences, you have to tackle, new challenges, right? So you are developing, your problem solving skills, you're developing your communication skills, you're developing teamwork skills, right? So you're working on growing as a person, as an individual, and you're faced with things that in my experience just make you grow further.
Thank you very much, Roy. And I think in this conversation are all very engaged and connected to different volunteers, and there are some very good volunteers, and there are some others that are not that good, right? And this goes to all because it's kind of a tough one, and you don't need to give names. That's the good thing, right? So does the perfect volunteer exist? And if it does, I mean, what are those characteristics or attributes of the great volunteer? So Danny, maybe from your side, it's more about the volunteer that you try to recruit and the one that really brings value. Maybe Roy, from your side, is about those Scotiabank employees that have gone the extra mile. Maybe from your side, Nelly, is what did you see in that volunteer that made it the perfect volunteer for you? So I don't know who wants to start first on this one. No need for names.
I could go first, and saying that, I don't necessarily think there's no such thing as a perfect volunteer, right? But I do think, like you said, Leo, that there are certain characteristics and qualities that make someone an exceptional volunteer. And I'm lucky enough to have met many exceptional volunteers along the way, trying to shape me as the person that I am today. And I think these exceptional volunteers are first of all passionate. If I can go back to one of the A's that Roy mentioned, is those that have found that true alignment to the purpose of the organization that they are serving as a volunteer. So I think that's first one, the passion. And second thing, I think it's about them being open-minded and flexible and open to learn. Because as a volunteer, you bring a lot of value to the organization, but you should be also open getting a lot of value, because I think that's the benefit of volunteering. It's just not giving, you're also receiving a lot more. It's like Baden Powell said before, volunteering is not just a duty, it's a privilege. And I think those exceptional volunteers are the ones that really understand the privilege that it is to be a volunteer.
Well, that's a good point. They don't see it as an obligation at all.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge difference, definitely. Nelly or Roy, who wants to go next?
Well, I can go ahead. Well, this is a question I actually ask myself a lot of times. I think this is very common for our generation, especially for women in the Gen Z generation, like thinking, am I the right fit for the position I have, especially when you're a volunteer and you're in a place where you are delivering programs for others and you're in that position where, I mean, you can change the life of someone or maybe just help someone improve. And you begin thinking, well, am I the right fit for doing this? Like, I'm no expert. I'm a young person. Do I have the capacity to do this? And I think that the only thing that makes you a great volunteer is having passion and commitment. I think that if you are doing the work, you're in a position where you are putting your best effort and doing your best into helping others improve and create a positive impact for others, and you are keeping an open mind for improving and learning, I think you are the best volunteer you can be. There is no such a thing as too little experience or too little knowledge when you were talking about volunteering. And some of the best volunteers I've ever met across different networks are those who are really passionate and really want to learn. So I would say you just need to be really committed to what you're doing, putting in the effort, putting in the hours, and I think everything will come. And if you're really passionate about a cause, you will create change. There may be a lot of hardships along the way, especially if you're a young person and you're just starting this path of leadership through volunteering. But I think I will encourage every young person to go ahead and try to be a volunteer, because it's really a transformative experience. And you just have to go ahead and do the work.
And Nelly, the other day I was reading, there was like a statement about what is the best teacher ever. And they said something that is very, very true. They said the best teacher ever is the one that shows up every day at the classroom, not just to teach, but also to learn, because that's when it starts being a co-creation process. And I always complain, about these educational processes where the students are there to absorb and they're just there to receive and they're not giving anything back. And that's, unilateral type of relationship is not building anything. But then when you have this volunteer that is open, to also get and not just to give, it is a two-way stream process. And that's when you start engaging, for example, the young people you are trying to benefit. So very, very interesting point that you have just brought. From your side, Roy, based on your experience there at Scotiabank?
Well, I have to agree with Daniel and Nelly. Definitely, passion is probably one of the biggest things. It's a lot of our programs work with young people, and when you see volunteers come to these opportunities and bring their passion and bring, like you say, the effort and bring their whole self, it really is inspirational, and you can see it on the faces of the kids when they get when they share that passion together. They get so inspired, they get so motivated, and I just think it's really valuable to bring that to volunteer experiences, because it Nelly, you're talking about the volunteer young person, but also the young people receiving the benefit of volunteering. On the other end, it's so inspirational for them to see these people come and bring all this knowledge, all this effort, all this inspiration, and all this passion. And I think that is a very, very important factor, very valuable factor in terms of the contribution of that excellent, great volunteer.
Thank you, the three of you. And I think you were right, Danny, when you said there is no such a thing as perfect volunteer, because perfection doesn't exist when it comes to human beings, right? But we kind of know which are those characteristics that you have a champion. You have not just someone to come and kind of click the box, but a champion for the organization, and it is all connected to what you have all described. Very good. So Nelly, I have a question for you. It is a little bit more personal as well, so it is not only Roy the one being triggered with more personal questions. So you were a JA student, so you went through the whole experience of being on the beneficiary side, and now you have decided to put your energy and your passion in building this alumni community and association as a volunteer, right? So now you are on the other side. So is that your new journey? Is that something that is really driving your passion and giving you the chance to continue? Why you decided to do such a thing, to now build the alumni association?
Well, for me, the alumni, being a part of the alumni network, especially having the opportunity of being the startup board, so the people who brought the alumni here to Argentina, has been totally transformative. Yes, I think it changed the path of my life completely. It was like an inflection point in my history. Because before entering in contact with JA, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And this is something you hear a lot with other alumni. I wasn't very sure what I liked, and going through a JA program, especially being able to be in this network of volunteering and being an alumni and being in a position of being a young person who created programs for other young people, really inspired me. It showed me that my mission in life is to create impact and to develop programs. And I think the opportunity that the alumni network gives you is very special, because you're a very young person and you suddenly have the opportunity of taking a lot of responsibilities and a lot of tasks that are really hard to come by elsewhere. Like, I remember that I was 19 and I was suddenly leading this team of 10 people who wanted to create programs in Argentina. And for me, it was the first time I have ever had such an opportunity. And I mean, I think it's great. I think this is something we hear with different alumni in the world. And now I'm a part of different youth volunteer networks, and it's the part I enjoy the most in my day. I love what we do in JA, but afterwards I get to enter other youth volunteer networks and do programs here in Argentina and internationally. And that is something that JA showed me. Like, I didn't know I wanted to do this with my life, and the alumni network really started that path. When I look back, thinking about my leadership journey and the journey that brought me here, being in the alumni was the first step. Totally. So yeah, it was totally transformative for me. And I think that moving ahead, I will always have that impact that JA gave me wherever I go.
And then you don't feel ashamed to say that you have more fun spending time with your alumni friends than spending time with us at the Regional Operating Center. It makes total sense. I'm supportive of that, actually. So, Roy, I have heard many times from people that are being invited to become volunteers, like saying, I have never done anything for others, like beside my circle, like helping my family, my friends. Like, I have never gone into a community center, do something. I don't know what I can contribute. I just don't feel comfortable with it. I've seen people like shaking before going into a classroom because they didn't know how to approach a group of young people. So what do you have to say to those? Because I'm sure you got this pushback sometimes with employees. What is your way to convince them that they can have an impact in a social cause?
I mean, it's all about, in my experience, it's been alignment, and it's not just alignment about your core skills or your strengths, but passions and interests. Anybody can become a volunteer. Like in my many years working with Scotiabank volunteers, like I've seen bankers build homes in El Salvador, clean up beaches in Jamaica. They plant trees in Costa Rica. Like, there's so many ways you can volunteer. So I think you gotta keep an open mind in terms of the opportunities that are out there, what interests you, what you want to do. Yes, perhaps your core strengths are in financial knowledge and literacy. And if that's what you want to pursue, great. And, JA has lots of excellent programs that have to deal with financial literacy and entrepreneurship and so on. But keep an open mind to other things that may be of interest, that may be a personal passion, a side kind of interest or project that you could volunteer with. It's a community center. It's a, we've went and cleaned up seniors' homes. Whatever cause appeals to you, where you feel like you can really engage and bring, as we talked about, that passion and that commitment. I think, go for it. You can ask your fellow employees. You can ask, the teams that focus on these areas, or you can reach out to the organizations that do this work, and I'm sure you'll be able to find information that will steer you in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Roy, because we, as organizations that need support from volunteers, what you have described is definitely part of how we need to rethink and understanding that not one size fits all when it comes to volunteerism. So very, very, very interesting. So before, we do have some questions from the audience, and showing that Scout and Jay is all about global footprint. We have in the audience some reps from Egypt, actually, and that's the beauty of the digital, right? Connecting people around the world. So, I mean, there is a flip side to volunteerism, right? And there are, of course, risks associated to working with volunteers. So for you, Roy and Danny, if you could share some of the risks associated and how you try to minimize this risk when it comes to working with volunteers.
Yeah,
It's a tough
sure.
one.
I think no, and it's like you said, huh? Your wish was to challenge us, and I think that's exactly where we're getting to. So indeed, there are always risk involved, and I think not just working with volunteers, working with human beings, right? Because as per our design, we're not perfect, and so I think one of the things that we can mention is, for Scouts, and I believe it's the same thing for JA and any other organization that relies on volunteers when they work with young people, is our commitment to providing young people with a safe space, right? And we have known of instances in the past where that has not always been the case. And as World Scouting, we are very much committed to making sure that we can guarantee parents and young people that when their child participates in scouting activities, they will be kept safe, that they are in a place where no harm will be done to them. And so it's important as well, and this goes back to how you manage volunteers, but also the more professional part of an organization, making sure that you have the policies, the procedures, and everything's in place to make sure that young people can participate in scouting without any risk of harm. And then it comes to having the right governance systems in place, having the right training and education of your volunteers. And I think that is key. We didn't go deep into that aspect, but I think it also goes back to your recruitment, making sure that you are attracting a fourth A for today, attracting the right volunteers that have the right profile, the right intention as to why they want to be volunteers, and continuously learning and having those moments of reflection to make sure that you have the right control processes in place to keep children safe.
Yeah, great point. Controls in place, trying to avoid such a harm happening, right? And when you work with millions of volunteers, I mean, that's not an easy task, but something that is critical and has to be prioritized. What about you, Roy, in terms of risks associated?
Yeah, so absolutely. From an organizational side, you always want to make sure that when you are organizing any sort of volunteer activity, that you take into consideration all externalities, all environmental risks, logistical risks. So you have to work through the access logistics, right? You have to make sure that it's safe, that it's safe for volunteers, it's safe for the participants. You consider what factors you need to bring in. Like, we've had volunteer opportunities that required bringing security, or sometimes even police escort, things like that. Depending on where you go, it just part of what you have to do to ensure that the experience is safe for all participants.
And Roy, there is a question from the audience more related to how to deal with the challenges that prevent people from volunteering. For example, the time constraint. So you have an employee that has to deal with the goals, with the KPIs, with everything that is going on at the company, and then the family, and many spheres on the air that we need to balance. So any hint, any idea of how we can deal with such a situation where people is more busy every day, and then you're here to ask them to give time to a cause? How do you manage that?
That is a very relevant question, and that's a very real challenge that I think organizationally that I think any organization faces, and that's where sort of the top to bottom organizational philosophy has to be bought into and aligned on that sort of volunteer engagement and commitment. And I think, in large organizations, oftentimes, like you say, there are competing priorities. So you need to carve out that time, those resources to provide those opportunities, have a volunteer day, have a, flex time where you can say, well, you know what, during work hours, you can take an afternoon and do a volunteer experience, right? So I think it has to be, the organization has to support the volunteer as well by providing that flexibility and providing that time as well, and have it part of the mandate that, yes, as an organization, it's not just on the volunteer to find the time, find the personal time outside of work hours, but oftentimes it's on the organization to say, we're going to support that, we're going to provide that flexibility so you are able to, step away and do something else and have that volunteer experience, even if it is during work hours.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, it has to be a policy, to provide such a flexibility. I mean, I have heard some volunteers saying, listen, yes, I got permission to volunteer for JA, but they told me that I can only do it on Sunday morning. Or after midnight every day if I want. So that's, I think, a key component of companies being fully engaged and making it even almost a policy that there will be flexibility for volunteers to go out there and have some volunteerism impact. Danny, there are people that want to volunteer for so many different causes and reasons. What is the number one value that you highlight when convincing volunteers of putting all of their energy and passion to benefit young people and education, and empowerment against so many other initiatives that are very, very valuable as well, like putting a tree or any other type of?
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
I think my answer is one word again, and that's the value of service. And it's by having people understand that when you serve, the biggest one benefiting from that service is yourself. I think it's one of the most selfless, but also one of the most selfish things that we can do. As human beings, we get so much out of serving others and serving a cause that it adds so much value to your life that you only have to experience it for you to be able to truly understand. So I think that's it. You are doing something for someone else, but you're also doing it for yourself. And you'll be thankful for that. Let's not talk about all the positive chemicals, the dopamine, the oxytocin, all of those things that get released. It's good for your health overall, and it's good for your quality of life, just to serve.
Yeah, that's a great answer, actually. That's a great answer. It's not about giving to others only, it's about giving to yourself. That's a great, great thing. So before we conclude, one last question for the three of you. Again, going personal, what is volunteering for you? And for you as a person, for you as a professional, what it means to you? So Nelly, let's go with you. You are the risk adverse in the group, being the young person.
Okay, you're putting me in the spotlight. I think that volunteering is such a fundamental part of my life right now. And I think it's part of my identity at this point. I have discovered a lot of what I like to do and who I like to be through volunteering. And it's really a way for me to explore my passions and what I like to do. So lately, what I do, if I'm passionate about a topic, I just find a volunteer opportunity on that topic. If I want to empower young professionals in the STEM area, I just start a project on that. So it's really a way for me to live to my full potential, and really like follow what I'm passionate about. So I agree with Daniel. You get a lot out of being a volunteer. I think it's really a great way for you to live through your true self. I think volunteering is that space that allows me to be my true self.
Thank you very much, Nelly. Danny?
I think, I fully agree with Nelly, but I think it's a way of life. It's the choice you make to consciously live a life of service. And again, it's there is. I mean, we can also be. I'm passionate about the work I do that I get paid for, but being a volunteer adds to that passion, adds more substance to my life, adds more depth to my relationships, to friendships that you build across the globe. I think a whole new world opens up just by volunteering. And as I said, it's a way of life.
Thank you very much. Roy?
Well, I think volunteering, in my mind, is something that is very empowering and satisfying. I mean, there are so many social issues and challenges that we face every day, and you kind of throw your hands up and think, oh, what can I do? Right? Like, how can I possibly tackle all this? So being able to actually engage and participate and, make an impact, however small, is very empowering, and it is very satisfying to actually say, I've made that effort, I've made that little contribution towards that particular cause that you're passionate or interested in. So that to me is like it's a key point there.
Wow, and I'm so glad that the team, Hernan, and the team put this question at the end, because you have just, in a way, put together the way that I would like to conclude today's conversation. Because volunteerism, as I said at the beginning, is definitely part of the theory of change for JA, Scout, and many other organizations out there. But I like to put it in a perspective of the individual, of the person that is going into a volunteerism experience. So starting by saying that it can become your identity, because it will allow you to live at your full potential. It is about you living in a different way. It is a way of life, because as Nelly described, she has been volunteering for so many different organizations, and it looks like she will continue doing it because she wants to live at her full potential. It adds substance to your life. So the way you put it, Danny, it looks like if you are not a volunteer, you are missing something. And because volunteer is the channel to have an impact in the community. And I think that if you are missing that part, I think you are not complete as a human being, as a member of the community, the society, the organization that you are serving. And as you put it, Roy, it is also about empowerment, because if you think about you driving your car around the city, going to school or going to your work, I'm sure you have at least 3-4 different situations where you feel some type of pain. You feel something that is wrong and that should be fixed. Now, if you arrive to destination and you do nothing about what you saw while you were driving, then you are in the co-pilot or in the witness or in the observer role. And that is not being empowered at all. It's the other way around. It's being the victim, but not being active in solving that thing that is painful. So yes, it is satisfying, Roy, as you were saying, to be empowered and to live at your full potential. So I think this should be the way to pitch new volunteers. It is not just about the impact that we are having in the community and in the world. It's about the impact that you will get as an individual. And I think that is a two-way stream valuable process that we have to put together. So very thankful to have companies like Scotiabank committing to the effort of not just having the social impact in place, but making sure that employees and members of the organization are being involved and engaged. And of course, we are thankful for having partners like Scouts movement around the world. So it is JA and other very impactful partners working together towards the same effort, stopping being arrogant to think that one organization will solve it all, understanding that this is a collective impact. And at the end, having examples like Nelly that went through this transformational journey at a very early age, being able to articulate the message, Nelly, in the way you did it, I think is bringing hope, because I was so delaying my process at your age, Nelly, and seeing that there are young people that they're doing much better than what we were doing at that age is bringing hope for what is coming next for the region. So thanks to the audience for having joined us. And again, thanks to each of the panelists. I told you this was going to be a very engaging conversation. I hope you have enjoyed it. And I hope that you decide, if you're not a volunteer yet, that now you decide to go for it. And if you are already a volunteer, to become even a better volunteer. Okay. Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Nelly and Roy again. And we will keep in touch, my friends. Bye-bye, everybody. Until next edition of Inspiring Voices. Gracias, Hernan and the team for the effort. Bye-bye.